Okay, again, this is Jesse Ledesma. I'm doing this from El Paso, Texas, approximately 8:12 a.m. And here, of course, the coughing fits will start. As I say, the more I talk, the more I cough. So I do apologize for that right now. Today's subject, I should have. Well, you have a little tag there if you can see on the screen. But today's lecture, if you will, is just on how we develop our what do I call it? How we develop our mental nature. So this is a everything that we feel, everything that we think, everything that we do. Okay, that was not very smart. Okay, we go. I'm just trying to lower it here, trying to. Oh, and sometimes technology just doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. So it's separated. That's the subject. And I begin this lecture. I already organized my outline by talking about our personal biology. We've learned enough in science, in study, to understand that we are a biological organism. And in this, what we have here is that the brain, as it relates to thoughts, emotions, and behavior, is very important. And sometimes we want to think that we're just like everybody else, and it'd be great if we had that, advantage. But sometimes the reality is that our own body betrays us. Our own brain betrays us. The neurotransmitters in the brain cells, the brain neurons, different functions of the brain. And a lot of our anxiety and depression is actually biologically based. I'm not saying it's 100%, but I'm saying sometimes the complications that we have to deal with in life related to thoughts, emotions, and behavior have to do with with our own biology. In this is the hormones that our body produces that are transmitted throughout the bloodstream. And I believe that one of the reasons that relaxation, as far as breathing exercises, slowing down the heart rate, help is because it slows down the transmission of hormones in the bloodstream. And some of those hormones are getting to the brain and affecting how we feel as individuals. Now, um, we do have a biological nature that contributes to our thoughts and our emotions, but we're also the individuals who have the ability to think. And I do believe that this is important because we, at a very small age, start to understand by our interactions with people. And that's good that I came to that thought because right here, and I'm just going to write it in, I should have put relationships. Let me see here and go ahead and capitalize that and highlight this word and not only put it to bold, italics, and underline it just to get it to stand out. A lot of what we will learn and that will contribute to our nature, who we are as a person, what we think, what we feel, how we behave, has to do with relationships. And as I was going to say, at a very early age, as children, as little babies in the arms of our parents or our caregivers, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of something or I was going to start sounding like I'm going to heck up a lung or two. Okay. So in these relationships, we're learning. And I'm going to go down to my, told you, down my outline here. Let me see here. Where did I put that? Okay. There we go. That's how we are interpreting information has to do with pleasure and pain. The information that gives us pleasure, we see as something we can use and something we can work with. Information that gives us pain, we want to avoid. So we're starting as a biological organism that is getting involved in relationships, and through these relationships is processing information. We're a thinking human being. Put that right there. We're a thinking human being. And we're coding information either as pleasurable and pain. Now, as long as I'm here, I want to jump ahead. I know I did this wrong. But this here is very important right here. Because let's say our own biology has betrayed us and we don't have the right amount of neurotransmitters. There are parts of the brain that didn't grow how they should have grown. And there's brain cells and there's interruption in the biological organism. That individual, even as a baby, is going to have trouble processing information. Is going to have problems processing information accurately and coding that information as good, as pleasurable, or as pain, and then is going to encounter learning problems. And as we're moving through these relationships, we are actually deriving an actual psychological illness. Um, what the child should be receiving is not only love, but is interactions and relationships that are not painful to the extent that they would traumatize the child. And I was going to do this by comparing the different psychological theories. Cognitive just means the way we think. Social psychology is about how we think in groups. And I didn't write any of that stuff down, but it doesn't matter because I'm telling you that you're developing from the day one as a child, excuse me, through your interactions with your environment, but mostly the human beings that are in your environment. And if you're at a very early age, you can start developing complications. You can start developing depression. You can start developing anxiety. And then as you develop further as a child, say we're going to write that in here, okay? The first thing that we're learning as a little child is security. That's the first thing right there. With our interactions with individuals. We're feeling comforted, loved, nurtured, taken care of. So we know that we can we're safe. Okay. We move on from that stage of development into a loving relationship with caregiver. And this could be the parent, the grandparent. We live in a modern world. It's not necessarily the parent who's taking care of the child. So the child is learning the child is safe. Now the child should be learning what constitutes a loving relationship between the child and the caregiver. And this is wrong. So I'll correct that. Okay. That's the second stage. That's the way I see it. Then comes social interaction. Okay. So the child feels safe. The child knows that the people around them, the people that are always around them, care about the child, love the child, will take care of the child. The child starts to wander out, meet other babies, other children, want to interact and grow and learn because we're basically learning entities. Excuse me. And through this, say, we're already acquiring information. And boy, that was done wrong. Okay. So we're already acquiring information and we're already coding it as pleasurable or painful. Okay. And we're starting to develop certain thoughts, ideas, perceptions, emotions. Okay. Because we are a thinking individual and we're developing in stages. Once we become social, then we start looking at answering the the true needs of life. I call them levels of service, and I will explain what I mean. Okay, friends, that's a level of service. Family, that's a level of service. Achievement, we all have a need to achieve at something, succeed at something. Achievement. Intimacy is a level of service. Intimacy. Okay, friends, intimate with friends, intimate with family. But of course, the most intimate relationship of all is the marriage relationship. Okay, so these are our level of services. We also, like to be entertained. So we have a need to be entertained. We like recreation because we like to do stuff, not just sit around and get fat and ugly. Okay, so these are our levels of service. And if you're going to have a well-rounded life, if you want to feel, you know, satisfied, like something's not missing. I think that the modern world today, the levels of depression among the people of the world has to do with they don't understand their levels of service. And what I mean by levels of service, this is what we should be doing for ourselves. We should have friends, we should have family, we should have goals. See, achievement comes from goals. Let me put goals in front. And of course, I mean career and education. Hey, one of these days I will learn. Okay. Goals and achievement, intimacy in marriage. Okay, another level of service is being a parent, so parenthood. And very little is made of this because there's people who don't believe that they were created to be parents. They're following the modern mindset that do what you want as long as it makes you feel good. And they don't understand that, yes, we were created, and we were created to have friends. We were created to have family. We were created to have goals. We were created to have intimacy, the most intense intimacy, which is in marriage. We were created to be parents. Okay, so we have these different things that we need to be involved in. Otherwise, we're not going to feel complete. Okay, and we do need to be entertained in recreation. Okay, need for entertainment. I can change that. Okay, that file doesn't need to be there. And all these different levels, okay, contribute to us as an individual. So when we progress from security, safety and security, we progress to the loving relationship with the caregivers. We're learning about socializing, what are the boundaries between friends, what are the boundaries between family members, what are the boundaries between strangers. Then we really do become, everything else had to be done with thought. We're comparing information. But then we really do become a thinking individual. We become a life philosopher. It's not that we stopped growing in the love relationship with our caregivers or stop growing in safety and security because we always want to know that we're safe and secure. But we're now, the important thing is life. And again, we're coding information with pleasure and pain. And as we're doing this, we're getting to emotions. If it wasn't for emotions, psychological illnesses wouldn't be that important. Nobody has ever suffered from a thought. We suffer from a thought because of the emotional attachments to that thought. So this is how we're becoming a person. And if in the early stages of development, we developed, let me see here, actual psychological illness, then our learning is complicated. And what we end up doing is becoming anxious or depressed. And we got years. See, people don't understand that. Now I'm going to get to the basic points that I made yesterday, and I'm always going to make. Say, understanding how we became a person, or at least understanding our psychological nature, our mental health nature, our mental nature, whatever you want to call it, uh, means that we can say, understanding how we develop our mental nature means that we can take some control. Because if we understand that what we're feeling and what we're experiencing is basically due to learning, then we can start learning new strategies. Okay? Now, we know we can think and we know we feel. Okay? But we also know that we can learn a positive attitude. I think I'm going to end every one of these video essays on that mantra. Reality means accepting our true life, not making it worse than it is, and not minimizing it by avoiding it. Reality means accepting the power that we have to change our attitude from a negative attitude to a positive attitude. And again, the messages that we're going to see in society are going to condition us, are going to brainwash us to the negative. That's always going to happen. But we, as an individual in control of our thoughts, can change that negative attitude to a positive attitude, which means we start becoming a healthier person. A healthy person takes um, active control of their life. A healthy person organizes their life. A healthy person thinks about their life knowing that they have some kind of control and knowing that there's something that they can do. Now, what is, I'm going to write this down here. What is a true life goal? Okay? Many people think that winning the lottery, winning American Idol, winning, if that television program is still on, Do You Want to Be a Millionaire? Everybody thinks that life is associated, or at least the value of life, the good value of life, because there is bad value, but the good value of life is associated to money. Most people think that. I would have to say that what to me constitutes life, let me see if I can write it down in a sentence. Life is an experience free of manageable, wow, stress. There we go. Life is an experience free of unmanageable stress. We're always going to have stress. There's no question about that. The problem is, or not the problem, the challenge is, can we meet the stress? Can we, let me see, I'm going to write this down. Can we meet the challenges of life in a healthy way? Okay. Now I make this point because some people will rob banks to survive. That's not meeting the challenges of life in a healthy way. Some people will resort to prostitution. That's not meeting the challenges of life in a healthy way. Some people will resort to drug addiction, perversions, fornication, whatever. And I'm not making a judgment. This is science. This is not a religious program. This is science. So, therefore, a person who is a waitress, a person who is a security guard, a person who is a taxi cab driver can have a life where they have the levels of services that is required because that's how we were made and that's what we need to truly have a a good life without necessarily having to win the lottery or win American Idol or inherit a whole bunch of wealth or succumb to crime. The only thing is, again, I gotta say it, it's attitude. I have to say it's if through everything that we went through, let's pick an age, any age at all. Let me see here. I need a clean part of my chalkboard here. Let's pick a 46-year-old man. Oops, so what kind of spelling is that? Old man. Okay, let's pick a 46-year-old man who is frustrated from his depressing life. Okay? And the person sees his life as depressing because of a lack of money. No, and I don't know how to spell this word. So notoriety. Okay, that means people know him. Okay, lack of money or notoriety. Okay, lack of friends. Usually they come in, you know, come in groups, lack of family. Okay, lack of personal interest. Okay, and etc. Okay, let's just go ahead and pick that guy. That person is going to walk into this guy here. Is going to walk into a mental health professional's office and say, tell him all of this. Okay, and then he's going to ask the person, what should I do? Okay, my concern is the person experience true psychological illness to the extent that he cannot meet the challenges of that psychological illness. He cannot think, he cannot control his emotions, and he cannot provide for the basic life necessities for himself. Those are my concerns. Okay, the fact that he's crying because he doesn't have a life, not necessarily concerned about that. Excuse me, but I needed that. Now, there are many experiences. The spectrum of psychological illnesses is very varied, very long. There's a lot that a person can suffer from. And I was thinking, what if you have another personality type? Now, I was watching a movie, and it's ironic where inspiration comes from. But the male character, and that's what I'll call him, I won't even give him a name, character, okay, has an apartment building where he can spy on his, and we'll say preferred resident. And when I mean spy, I mean spy. Okay? Now, this is obviously a very sick person who, what happened here? Missing a letter. Okay? One day I will learn to type or spell. Okay? And he takes it to the extent, his obsession, he takes his obsession to the extent that he's drugging the woman and he's gratifying himself sexually. See, with me, I have to say, to be true to my philosophy, that anybody, and I mean anybody, can develop this mindset. Excuse me, I passed it. About being realistic about our life, adopting a positive attitude, and in a healthy way, start taking control of our life by organizing our life. We organize the hours we sleep, we organize what we eat, we organize when we go to work, we organize our attitude at work. And that's good because I didn't include this, but this is important because most of us find ourselves in a work environment. And we get along with some employees, but other employees we want to run over with our car. The reality is, and I was going to do a whole video essay on all the jerks in societies that frustrate us. But it's not necessary because realistically, if you honestly want to start feeling better and you want to start having a better life experience, you need to start, and I'm going to use that word, we need to start taking interest in ourselves. It isn't what they're doing, it's what we're doing. Okay? We're putting the emphasis on the wrong person. We're putting the emphasis on the jerk, and the jerk's always going to be a jerk. There's nothing that you can do that will make that jerk not be a jerk. What you can do is change the way that you feel when you interact with that jerk. And I'm just managing some of my systems here. And that's important because part of our life stress, a good amount of our life stress, has to do with dealing with our managers, co-workers, people on the street. I mean, I'll keep saying it. I think to my last day on earth, when I'm at home, I'm okay. But as soon as I drive out onto a public street, I'm very stressed out because you got a bunch of wacko weirdos. I mean, just trying to kill everybody, trying to kill themselves, and they're trying to kill everybody. But the reality is that, you know, they're always going to be there. We have to be smarter than they are. And part of having a healthy, enjoyable, non-stressful living experience, life experience, is understanding that we don't control these people, but we do control ourselves. One of the things that I was doing when I was writing my notes on the jerks around us is that there's no reason for us to compete with them. It is a natural part of the human being to want to see justice. If the speed limit is 55, we don't want to see people doing 65. That's understandable. But the reality is that you are not going to stop them from speeding. You're not going to stop them from running a red light or a stop sign. You're not going to stop them from driving around you like a crazy maniac. The only thing that you can do is understand that these people exist, be aware of them, but don't let it affect your nature. Let your life be about you and about what you're doing. Say, it isn't them. It isn't them making you depressed. It's you making you depressed. That's when you start taking ownership of your life, when you realize that the way you view things in life, the way you view your post mail carrier, let's go, okay, the way you view police officers, the way you view lawyers, I mean, your total attitude about life is what is really contributing to whatever psychological complication that you're experiencing. Now, for some people, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much you tell them about, the healthy way of managing a life, about changing attitude, about being realistic, about controlling your emotions with positive thoughts versus negative thoughts, about developing a certain reality, a realistic perspective, and not necessarily trashing your realistic perspective. If you're a hardworking individual paying your bills and providing for your basic needs, you're very, very accomplished and a very what is the word I don't want to use the word valuable, but you're a person who has achieved a lot of personal success. And that's something to be proud and to feel good about. And it's unfortunate that we happen to believe that in our modern society we have to be filthy rich to be okay. Majority of individuals are not going to get to be filthy rich. So therefore, what do you have? People who are going to be depressed because they're not filthy rich. And I don't want to give the impression that the complications in people's lives, because these videos are dedicated to individuals with psychological challenges that they're having trouble meeting. And the reality is that life is our life. We're in control of it. We're in charge. We decide what happens. We decide what we feel. We decide what we think. And then consequently, we decide how we behave. Now, if we're having trouble in these areas, we're going to suffer. We're having trouble in friends, family, goals, achievement, intimacy, marriage, parenthood. We're going to suffer. And we have to accept the reality we were not made to be on an island by ourselves. We have to accept the reality that we're going to have to start interacting with people and start having an actual life outside of our living rooms or apartments, whatever the case may be. Your living room at your home or a small apartment. You need to get to talk to people. Part of health and therapy in managing psychological challenges is interaction with other people. And I have to say this, that even though we interact with other people, that doesn't necessarily mean we complicate these relationships by letting our mental health challenges dominate the relationship. That's a big error. When I was getting my degree in psychology, I hated the course that was called disclosure, and I'm not going to write it on my chalkboard. But basically, the philosophy is that health comes about by sharing um, intimate details of our life, and I am personally opposed to that. If you meet a stranger, say for the first time, and not a scary stranger, just let's say somebody at the airport, and for whatever reason you start to talk, I don't believe the stranger should be telling you the most intimate details of their life, and I definitely don't believe we should be telling that stranger the most intimate details of our life. Just talk about the weather and sports and stupid superficial stuff. And our friends, I have to give that admonition that our friends are not there for us to, um, you know, bug with our challenges. They're friends. Friends are there to tell you jokes and to enjoy life, and now and then to comfort. Now and then, not all the time. Because that really does strain the friendship. It even strains the relationship with brothers and sisters. You know, you only a person can only take so much from the drug addict brother or the drug addict sister before they just decide this is more than I can take and I need to, defend myself. Usually that means by not answering the phone, not opening the door, whatever the case may be. So the mental health challenge that we're going through, I have to give the admonition that that is a challenge we're going through, excuse me, and that's something we have to deal with. And it's not that difficult. One of the things is understanding how it is we became the person who thinks and feels and behaves the way that we think and feel and behave. And again, we were a little baby and then we grew up to be an adult. And through that journey, we experienced a lot of pain. And that pain had an effect on us. The pain had an effect on how we feel. And now we have these overwhelming emotions that we're just convinced that we cannot control, and we're letting it get the better of us. But the reality is that every single one of us has the necessary skills to start managing our emotions. But all of human psychology is not just emotions. It's biology, it's thinking, it's interacting through social relationships, and it's the learning process, and it's attitude, what we learn, how we shape a philosophy. And I do think that in our modern time, the dominant philosophy is everything sucks, nothing works. Why bother? And you know, for whatever it's worth, just for whatever it's worth, I gotta say that let me see here. It really does matter. Nothing is as it seems, and we have the power to change things for what they are and make them better. When I started writing articles and producing media products on the internet that specifically relate to life, I wanted to help people. I don't believe that we need to be tortured souls afraid of life and suffering and pain, going through pain and suffering. I understand the reality that we will meet challenges, but I also believe that we have what it takes to meet these challenges. And I will have to say that almost all people can recognize how they are an obstacle to their own uh, joy and happiness. And if you put a lot of attention onto what people are and who people are around you, you're probably going to, not venture very far in life if you're continuing to think that everything sucks, nothing works, and why bother? And the reality is that you're yearning for that day of peace. You're yearning for that day that's stress-free, where you can laugh and where you can be happy and where you can have joy in your life. And it's attainable through developing a better attitude, through managing your emotions, by putting your life in order so where you're not stressed out, you don't have enough time for everything, and things are you're losing control. Stuff is happening, like your checks are bouncing if you still write checks, or bills aren't getting paid, just because you're so stressed out you don't want to pay attention anymore. And that is a very significant condition in life. But if you start, saying, well, this is the life I have, and it doesn't have to be a bad life experience. I can be grateful for what I have. I can take care of what I have. I can broom and mop, and I can eat what I need to eat, and I can sleep, and I can take care of all these different details in my life, so bills aren't getting, so I'm not getting any added cost to my bills. And I can sit there and figure out, well, what is it exactly that is bugging me in my life? Is it because I don't have friends? And if you don't have friends, that's going to come up. If you don't have family members interacting with your parents, your brothers, your sisters, and then if you're not, you need to be a goal-oriented person. That's part of how we were created. And you may not think about it, may not think that it's a valuable thing in life, but the most intimate relationship, which is a marriage relationship, is something that we were made to have, regardless of the modern cultural practices. Okay? And these levels of service really do make us as individuals fulfilled. And understanding how we got to be to this person, well, now we know where we can, tweak. What is it that we can move so we can have a better life? We can definitely change our attitude, right? We can definitely start managing our emotions and through relaxation and meditation, understand those emotions. Excuse me. It is natural to be depressed after a long-term romantic relationship has come to an end. That's normal. It's the whole separation, loss, and, having to accept the reality that that person's not going to be in your life anymore. However, that's the negative. That's what we have been taught. If you lose a relationship, it's the end of the world. Realistically, we've been taught that. And there's nothing you can do about a relationship that ended. It just ended for whatever reason. Now, if you had a part to play, well, get yourself a little notebook and say, this is what I did wrong. And the next time, challenge yourself not to do that. So you're in control. But the reality is, if a relationship didn't work, the positive from that is that now you're free to find a person who you can really enjoy. I don't understand why people know the relationship isn't working, it's stressful, it's not pleasurable, but they want to stay in it. Now, two mature individuals can figure out their nuances and their details of their personalities and maybe make it work. It's a possibility. But where I was going to was the management of emotions, understanding the emotion. The emotion comes from the idea that a separation in a relationship is a bad thing. But we can change that idea and say, well, now I have the opportunity to find the person whose company I would really enjoy and who would truly make me happy. That's the positive. That's managing emotions. You can get stuck in the negative, that it's a bad thing, that you lost your job, it's a bad thing. You may have lost a job that you're not going to get, but the reality is that there are many opportunities out there. And maybe an opportunity where you really, really feel fulfilled and feel like you belong. Now, having said that, I got to say, as far as work, Work serves only one purpose, and that is to earn money. There's this idea that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That to me is just foolish nonsense. The reality is work is gonna suck. Nobody wants to work. We gotta drudge, we gotta wade through the muck and get the paycheck. But once we get the paycheck, then we do what we want to do. We eat the food we want to eat. We buy the books we want to buy. See, that's a healthy attitude. Understanding work is a bad, it's one of those annoying things of life, but it comes with the money that we earn. And if we're smart money managers, and that's a positive, we can have other stuff that we like, the stuff we're supposed to be involved in, the different levels of service in life. See? So it's just an example of getting over the frustration, the depression, because we're obsessing on a negative thought. And it's probably, everything we went through from day one to where we are right now. Interactions with people, acquiring information, being brainwashed to the negative ideology, suffering losses, going through careers, getting fired, laid off, not succeeding in the university, um, disappointments, failures, just piling up on each other. And then, of course, the worst thing is we're getting these disappointments and there's failures, which are part of life, natural process. And we're starting to interpret it in a bad way. We're starting to develop a negative attitude. Okay. And on top of that, we're individuals who've always had a bad biology. For whatever reason, our brain cells, our neurotransmitters, our hormone glands, our high blood pressure is betraying us. And we have that complication. So here we are, a bottle of nerves and emotions, and we can't socialize. We don't know how to get to the right romantic relationship. When we do meet somebody, we try, but we just don't make it work. Again, we got to have a realistic understanding of who we are as people. That's one of the things. What is our nature? Learning about how our nature developed really is learning about who we are as a person. And if there are things that we find we don't like, well, then we need to know that we can have some impact on change. See? And I think that's the end of the lecture. I think I about said everything that there is need to say on this part. I'm pretty sure I'll redo the lecture because I always forget something. But that's just the basic understanding of our thoughts, our social interactions, how we develop a psychological nature early on in age through trauma. We get psychological illnesses, and then not only are we confronting a stressful life, but we have a biological system and a psychological illness system that is complicating our our actual circumstances in life. But if we just stop and realize this is what I would really like to get out of life and develop some strategies about how we can accomplish those goals that we have set, and then by being positive, optimistic, being a real thinker and a doer, an actor, we take it step by step and we start putting our life in order. We start organizing our emotions. We stop obsessing on things. We stop looking at things in the negative. We accept the reality of what it is we're going through. And then there comes that day when we build the life that we can enjoy. It is somebody else isn't going to build it for us. No one else is going to take control of our thoughts. No one else is going to learn how to manage our emotions. Nobody's going to take us from a negative attitude to a positive attitude. Nobody's going to sit down and get a notebook and figure out where the problems are in the friendships, in the family, in the goals, education, career goals, life goals, in the marriage, in the relationship with children. We need to sit down and figure that out. And slowly, Under no circumstances you should go up to your spouse, or your husband or your wife, and say, I figured it out, and this is what you got to do to make me happy. Don't do that. Say, I figured it out, and this is what I have to do to make me happy. The reality is that the majority of people around us, we're just going to accept for who they are. This is really about us. And I know that if we're an individual of a certain nature, we can have the ability to influence and have impact in other people's lives. Thank you for listening, and I wish you well.